All right. Good morning, everyone. Good afternoon, everyone. This is Luciano Oliveira, Oliveira Lawyers. And today we have a guest here, is Levi Borba. How are you doing, Levi?
I'm great. Thanks for asking.
All right. For those who don't know Levi runs a channel on YouTube. I would say a successful channel on expats, right, Levi?
All right. Yeah, that's true.
All right. Would you like to tell us what is your focus? Like, what is the goal of your channel?
Yeah, the goal of my channel is basically to help people that want to retire abroad, to do something we call geo arbitrage, because a lot of people, they live in regions that have a very high cost of living, and they want to move to other regions where they can have better climate, they'll have lower cost of living, will be overall better for their health, because warm areas, they are positive on many aspects for human health. But they just don't know where yet, which places offer a lower cost of living and all those other benefits.
That's very interesting, Levi. And so as you probably know, like we specialize in Brazil. I was born in Brazil and raised in Brazil as well. But as we develop our, mission of taking good care of our clients, we are starting to work with Portugal as well. Just because, Brazil is not going to be the answer for everyone. So we understand that more options could mean a better match for our clients. Most of our clients, they are from the United States. So doing your work, Levi, did you have any experience with Brazil and Portugal? Like, have you been to those countries?
Yes, I was actually also born in Brazil, but I moved there a long time ago. My family does not live in Brazil anymore, but I was born in the countryside of São Paulo. I studied there during elementary school, and then I moved out to Chile. After Chile, I moved out to Middle East. After Middle East, I came to Europe, which is where I am settled already for most of my life. But I have some experience with Brazil from both sides, especially in our channel. We made quite a polemic video, because a lot of people asked to us about Latin America. Our most successful video ever was about Latin America. And a lot of people said, but what about Brazil? And we recently made a video about a city in Brazil that a lot of my audience always ask about, which is Florianópolis. I had some contacts there, so they gave me a lot of information about Florianópolis. It's also a place where I travel for holidays. My wife, my wife is Polish, she loved Florianópolis also because it's really nice place. And most of my audience is also Americans, Canadians, and British citizens, which are looking for a warm place. In general, that's the first thing that they are looking for, a warm place. Nobody wants to move in old age to Finland. But to warm places, and a lot of people asked about Florianópolis. We made this 15-minute short documentary. It was really, really good feedback.
That's so interesting. So you're born in Brazil. Like, I didn't know that. So we are fellow Brazilians, right? But I guess you move it out when you're younger. Like, I couldn't tell by the accent, by the way. But yeah. So what about Portugal? Experiences in Portugal as well, Levi?
Yes. On Portugal, there is also, and it's very funny because while we don't have a lot of people from US asking about Portugal, there is something very curious between British people and Portugal. And there is a huge demand of British people for Portugal. Before they had the Golden Visa, which was an amazing and very attractive program for foreigners, now they scrapped it off because so many foreigners start to move to Portugal that the prices of real estate in some regions like Algarve
skyrocket, right?
So the government thought it's better to remove that because it was too attractive. But still nowadays, there is huge demand for Portugal, and we are seeing a very interesting shift from this region of Algarve in the south to more northern regions, Braga, even Coimbra, which is quite surprising because it's not a coastal city. There are no beaches in Coimbra, but there are still an increasing demand for places like that.
Yeah, I have a friend of mine. He's from the UK, and he tried to build a hotel in Brazil in the early 2000s. He couldn't succeed, unfortunately, because of the red tape and bureaucracy. But now he's living happily in Algarve. Okay, so that's a story I can relate. And yeah, so Portugal, I know about the golden visa, right? Like, I mean, the real estate is usually very straightforward because you're buying a property and you're getting a golden visa. And I know there are still available tracks, but they are more cumbersome. Like, you know, if you have an investment in Portugal, you create 10 job positions, right? If you open a company and you spend like 500,000 euros and you have at least 5 job positions, if you do like an investment for 250,000 euros in a cultural kind of a project in Portugal, you could still get like the golden visa. But I would say that nowadays, like the golden visa from Brazil is of course much more interesting, at least for now. I'm not sure if you follow Brazilian politics, Levi, but the entire, like this more recent immigration framework in Brazil, it came under President Bolsonaro. Now we have a different administration, but it looks like they are keeping the framework because it is, of course, like very good for Brazil, right? And one of the things we think it could happen to the golden visa is a requirement increase, because this requirement has been the same since 2018. Like I did some quick math, and it was 1 million reais back in 2018. Today it should be 1.8 million reais, but it's still the same 1 million reais. So pretty attractive for foreign citizens.
Yeah. On the top of that, one thing that pushed a lot of people, a lot of my audience, to ask me in the comment sections more about Brazil, was that recently, in the last 3 years, and that the whole world noticed that, there was a huge devaluation of the Brazilian real, which made the country extremely cheap for people that have income in other currencies. It came to a point where Brazil nowadays, it's less expensive than Eastern Europe.
That's crazy.
One of the sources that I have in Florianopolis is exactly a person that told me it's a really good city where I can live on my social security retirement from the US. So in the US, you cannot live on a social security. Meanwhile,
Absolutely.
the same person moved to Brazil, and he's living on a very nice place, a beachfront apartment, just on social security. It's really impressive how this devaluation of the Brazilian currency made the country extremely affordable for foreigners.
True, Levi. We actually have many applicants for the retirement visa, right? Like you were talking about Social Security. And there is even a specific segment of the U.S. population that is coming to Brazil in droves. And this is like the military, people from the military. And we are very proud to, take good care of them. And there are some very interesting cases because whenever something unfortunate happens, to these folks, they can retire earlier than, other people. So we have like successful applicants for the retirement visa, even in in their 30s, right? And I think it was about a month ago or a little longer than that, we got our first applicant in his 20s, right? So imagine, retiring in Florianopolis. And Florianopolis, just like you said, is a major destination for expats. Usually they like the idea, of the island because the island, because of its geographical location, it makes it usually safer than other areas. In Brazil, there is, a lot of startups, in the town. There are lots of expats. So it does create a very, and of course, like the natural beauty as well. So it does make a really interesting choice to foreign citizens. Now, on the devaluation of the currency, I'm not sure if you're following up, but actually, like for the last few months, like there was an additional devaluation of the currency. So up to December or January, right? Like whenever our clients for the Golden Visa, they were buying property, a US dollar was buying roughly like 5 reais, okay, or sometimes even 4.9 reais. And now we have transactions happening with $1 buying 5.6 reais, which it does, bring in. Yeah, it's a big difference. So we are actually having like, more clients than usual for this time of the year. And unfortunately, we are having to decline some clients so we can take good care of those who are getting on board. But yes, that's interesting to Brazil, like the devaluation. It does cause some problems in the economy, but for the foreign citizen, from a foreign citizen perspective, I think it makes the country even more interesting. Also worth to mention to those who don't know, like the Brazilian geography, towards the south of the country, usually prices are higher. And as Levi was saying, like still, it's a competitive area of the country. Now, if you go to the north, for instance, the north and the northeast, then it's even more interesting from like the currency perspective. Which other areas do you know in the country, Levi?
Yeah, I know very well the state of São Paulo. Many times during my childhood, my parents, they went to the north littoral, the north coast of São Paulo, places like Ubatuba, Caraguatatuba, those cities. So that I know very well. And I also know the place where my family was from, Ribeirão Preto. So that part. And the south. I never went to the northeast, never in my life. And I hear very little about the north, especially because now my contact with Brazilians is based the people from my little region, countryside. So not many with these other parts. And the parts that I research for my audience. So every time we have some demand, because most of my audience is basically people that are considering, in one hand, Florida, because most of them are American. So should I go to Florida for retirement or should I go somewhere else? And those comparisons that we always make in our videos is always between Florida and something else. In this case, Florianópolis. We also made one with Rio. In the case of Rio, it was a bit very tight in terms of costs, because Rio is not an expensive city. It has the most expensive real estate meter in Brazil nowadays. So it was quite expensive. Meanwhile, Florianópolis was 45% cheaper than Florida. And on the coast of São Paulo, there is some people, and we also made some studies. Soon we were going to release a video about the region of São Sebastião, the region of between Bertioga all the way up to Ubatuba, because there is really some nice pieces available for people that want to retire in smaller cities, on the more tight-knit communities. And it's a lot of people are concerned about violence in Brazil. And when we made our last documentaries about it, a lot of people asked about violence in Brazil. And those parts, specifically, they are quite relatively safe, especially when you compare to the USA nowadays. If a person wants to move out from Cleveland or from Pittsburgh, he will have a huge upgrade in terms of security by moving to São Paulo or to... It's safer. Yeah. By all aspects, São Paulo or Florianópolis, Santa Catarina, they are safer than Cleveland, than Pittsburgh, even than San Francisco, even than some parts of California. So the matter of violence, sometimes, surprisingly, it plays in favor of Brazil at this point.
That's such an interesting point, Levi. That's very interesting. And in the state of São Paulo, in addition, to the city of São Paulo, which is, of course, probably the number one destination for foreign citizens arriving in Brazil, right? Like, I mean, you can go elsewhere, but you arrive in Brazil. Most of the flights, they arrive actually in São Paulo. There are some cities, like you're mentioning Ribeirão Preto, where you're from. There are some smaller cities that they are absolutely rock stars when it comes to the quality of living and safety in general, right? So I can give an example, like there is a city called Vinhedo and Valinhos. They are an hour drive from São Paulo, and they have been ranked as one of the safest or best cities, like from a living perspective in Brazil. So the state of São Paulo, it's kind of surprising to many people when it comes to the safety side. Now, like if you are in São Paulo, there are some specific areas that are more problematic than others, such as downtown. Okay, and I am a downtown guy. I was born in São Paulo downtown. Our office is in São Paulo downtown. Whenever I go to São Paulo, I stay in downtown. But true, right? Like there are so many layers, right? That is very difficult when people just say, like Brazil is not safe, right? So that's a very interesting perspective. And by the way, we have some participation here in the chat. I can see my friend Bill, as usual, supporting our live stream. I also see Marcela. Marcela is cracking a joke over here. Marcela says, in Brazil, you never arrive on time for the meetings. You wait at least 15 minutes after the scheduled time. Being on time is rude. I love that. That's Marcela. Thank you for sharing, Marcela. Bill says, I guess I would be really rude. Yeah, that's very true. And like being a Brazilian myself and being raised in Brazil, I had to learn that, like in other countries, people actually show up on time. And sometimes I would be like half an hour late. And I would think that would be absolutely natural, right? And then eventually I got to know better. And what about you, Levi? Like, you still have, some kind of a Brazilian quirks, or, now you are an European folk?
No, most of those things, with time, we naturally adapt. But there was some fuzz in many situations. For example, when I married my wife 5 years ago, a lot of the guests, naturally, they were Brazilians, and naturally, they expected that the marriage would start 10, 15 minutes late. It started exactly at the time. So I had more than 30 guests arriving when the ceremony already started, when the bride already was in the altar, and then it started to arrive all these people. It was a bit embarrassing because naturally people expected that marriage never starts on time because the bride never arrives on time. Well, some parts of the world, they arrive on time. Yes.
Very interesting example. Yep. So now, where are you living in Europe?
Yes. Right now, I'm living in Poland. We were, before we were living in Portugal, in a city called Leiria, in Portugal. Really small city, but splendid, by all means splendid. But recently we moved to Portugal, to Poland, and from here it's European Union, so it's pretty much everything well connected together.
Got it. That's true, right? Like you can, and that's an advantage. Like usually when we are discussing the Portugal route, you kind of have your foot in the European Union, and then you can, travel anywhere you want. Like there are no more barriers, right? Like, I mean, or border control. I know you still need like a residency authorization if you intend to stay in another country for good, and then you may need to meet some financial requirements. But listen, if you're coming from the US, I'm pretty sure you're good on the financial requirement, right?
Yes.
And it's so nice to have so many different countries with different cultures and languages. And I'm just curious, like, so are you speaking Polish at this point, Levi? Like, how do you communicate in Poland?
In Polish. It's it took many years because it's a very different and very difficult language by the grammar, by the pronunciation. It's extremely difficult, but it took more than 4 years to learn it. I started to learn before moving here, 2 years before when I arrived here. I kept learning it, and the experience, because before here I was living in another country, and before I was living in Chile, which is a Spanish-speaking country, and every time when you learn the language of the country, the experience of living there, it becomes something else. It's just so much better. You can socialize with the locals, because naturally everyone, your first circle of friends, of colleagues, always is going to be other foreigners. But once you learn the local language, you're going to expand the circle to a point that you start to feel like a local. So nowadays, it's most of the time in Polish.
Very interesting. So are you close to the Ukraine border?
We are in Warsaw. We are more or less, we are closer to Belarus than Ukraine. But here we are 250 kilometers from Ukraine. 250.
Have you been to Lviv already?
No, never. We're planning to travel there 3 years ago. 4 years ago. Then came COVID. Nobody could travel. Then when COVID finished, we wanted to travel again. The war started. So it's still a place that is on my bucket list, but not visited yet.
Yeah. So I was very lucky, and of course I feel very sorry for the situation in Ukraine. But I was lucky, like 3 months before the war started, I went to Ukraine, and I had an opportunity to visit cities like Lviv, which is by the border with Poland, Kyiv, and Kharkiv, and a few other cities, and actually even the Chernobyl, the Chernobyl town. Yeah, so there was such a. It was a bucket list thing, by the way.
I wanted really to visit there, but still not. I couldn't.
Yeah, no, it's from out of this world, right? The whole experience, and you go through checkpoints, like they have radiation detection rooms that you need to go through, and you need to follow very specific, procedures, and the feeling of being in that kind of a ghost town, and to see those scenes that you could. Just imagine, by watching the HBO series, it was one of my bucket list items, and I had an opportunity because we also do some development, web development for the firm, and we were trying to find a replacement, a developer for our work. And then I said, you know what, I'm gonna find a reason to visit Ukraine, and I didn't know back then that the war was going to start just a couple of months later. But yes, I know the kind of feeling of Europe in that part of the globe, and it's so interesting. I don't know. I also understand. The beauty of living in Eastern Europe, for sure.
Yes, the funny thing here is that. The people from South America here, they will have two kinds of. They will divide it very clearly in two types. One will pass a few months, and when arrives winter, which is the hardest time, because it's very easy to live in Eastern Europe during summer. It's beautiful. Everything is green. It's warm. Today is 30 degrees. So it's really easy. But when arrives winter, the first winter, half of the group will give up. That is perfectly natural. Half of them will give up. A lot of people, 3 or 4 months after the beginning of winter, they will just give up. Others will survive the first winter. When you survive the first winter, you are good. You can easily live here 3, 4, 5 years, as many as you want. As long as you survive the first winter. It's that critical moment, because everything is dark most of the time. Sometimes you have sunlight during 2 or 3 hours. Everything is gloomy. Wow. It's cold. It's a bit difficult. But once, it's a few months per year only. Once it goes, it goes.
That's so interesting. And because we are talking about expats and global choices, it looks like Poland has a very distinctive approach to immigration, right? At least from the news that we see. Is it true? Like, how do you see Poland's take on immigration?
It's very curious, this question, because we hear so often that Poland is very harsh on immigration. Poland is very difficult to immigration. But Poland today is the country with most immigrants in the last 4 years all over Europe. If you put together Sweden and Germany, which are two countries that are famous for receiving a lot of immigrants, both together in the last 4 years, they didn't receive as many immigrants as Poland. Poland received 3 million immigrants in the last 3 years. The difference here is that most of those immigrants are from Ukraine, Belarus, and the Caucasian region, which is Georgia, Armenia, and Azerbaijan. So it's culturally not that different. Of course, there are cultural differences between Ukraine and Poland. There are cultural differences, but it's not that culturally different. So Poland received a lot of immigrants. It's just that on the day-to-day, they don't appear that much in the streets, and they just live their life. They're very, very, very small social tension here. The biggest social tension, actually, it's when in some very specific dates on the year, when there's a holiday in Poland that they celebrate to remember the victims of a massacre committed by Ukrainians. And in the same day, the Ukrainians, they celebrate a holiday because on the same day they say there was a massacre committed by Poles against them. On this one day, there is some social tension. All the rest of the year, it's very relaxed.
That's very interesting. Yeah. Now, I can tell that just like you said, right? Like, I mean, there is a similarity between the Polish people and people coming into the country, right? Now, when we talk about Germany and Sweden and other countries, that's actually the opposite, right? Like, I mean, you're talking about like very different cultures that are coming into the country, and this is probably prone to, you know, like some accommodation, if you will, down the road, or some tension, or some, you know, like some issues, I would say.
Yes, yes. And this is something very interesting, because we also note that in other countries, the three safest countries in the European Union are, by this order, Lithuania, Poland, and Portugal. Lithuania does not have a lot of immigrants, but both Poland and Portugal, they have a huge amount of immigrants. Lisbon is 15% immigrants. Warsaw is 11% immigrants. This is more than many capitals. Madrid doesn't have that amount. Rome doesn't have that amount. So both Warsaw and Lisbon have more immigrants than most European capitals. Still, both are safe cities. So the whole point is the immigration in those cases are from people that doesn't bring a lot of social tension, like we are seeing right now in Stockholm. Yeah.
Absolutely, that's a great point. And Levi, now for those watching our channel right now, like they are usually interested in Brazil, naturally, right? Like some of them now interested in Portugal as well. And for those who haven't started their journey yet, and Bill, correct me if I'm wrong, you are one that is still working on your planning. Like, what would be your advisory, you know, like for planning for either the short term, you know, or the long term to live in Brazil?
I think that there are two ways. We always, every time someone of my audience asks about a country, I always say, what do you want to do in a country? Do you want to go there to live a good life? Or do you want to go there to make money and work and so on? Because this is the thing. The first thing that I would advise to people is define very clearly what you want. Do you want a country that has can provide you with a good, safe life, but not many business opportunities, or you want a country full of business opportunities, like a giant blue ocean, but not such a good life. It's very difficult in the world, a country where you have both. It's very difficult. I live in Europe because Europe gives me the opportunity to have a good life. Business-wise, there's a lot of red tape, there's a lot of bureaucracy, there's a lot of taxes. My brother, he preferred to go to Texas in USA, where you have almost no red tape. He started his business, he's doing good, but of course, life there, it's more stressful, it's different. So to anyone that wants to move abroad, first you need to ask yourself, what do you really want? I had a friend, he studied with me in Brazil, both we studied together. He moved to Italy to open a business. And the thing he said that he said to me, I have the sensation that I am drying ice because no matter what I do, my business never moves. I will never get rich that way. And I told him, but you don't go to Italy to get rich. You go to Italy to live a good life. If you want to get rich, go to places that will be better for you. And that's my first advice. Decide what you really want. Do you want to have a good life, pleasant, with not much stress? Or do you want to explore new opportunities, which often are found in places that doesn't offer you the best infrastructure, that doesn't offer you the most comfort, but offer you a lot of opportunities and problems to solve?
That's a great point, Levi. And to connect to something that I do share here in our channel from time to time, the golden visa is usually understood as the real estate investment visa route. There is a second route here in Brazil, which is like you can actually get permanent residency by starting a business, right? And to me, it was very clear early on that this was not something that I would like to offer to foreign citizens, right? Particularly if they come like from the United States. Because like they expect to run a business in a certain way that would never be possible in Brazil, right? Due to the red tape, bureaucracy, the tax confusion, the tax structure that we have, but most importantly because of the very old framework we have for labor law, right? So in Brazil, like there are so many labor obligations and labor red tape that I cannot see like someone coming from the United States to succeed. Of course, like some will succeed, but we need to think in terms of an average. And I could tell, listen, if I bring someone on board for this type of permanent residency, I'm sure like a few years down the road, this person is going to look at me and say like, how could you allow me to take on this route, right? I mean, for those who do not know, like we have, labor lawsuits is still common, unfortunately, in Brazil for, like employees when they leave an employer, they are going to sue the employer for, like sometimes, legit reasons, but also often for bogus reasons. Like they're going to say, well, I was working, extra hours when they were not working. And they are going to try to squeeze some additional money on top of whatever they were paid. And not surprisingly, this is very harsh on employers. There is a very famous case, like if you want to know more about that, you could research for those who are with us today about Walmart. Like Walmart came to Brazil. They tried, I think, for over a decade to establish themselves in the country. And at the end of this journey, they said, listen, enough is enough, goodbye, Brazil. I'm not coming back, right? And Walmart is like present throughout the world. So I think, just like every other country, and you're saying, right? Like, there is a lot of upsides in Brazil, but you make money through a business, particularly if you are playing by the books, is not easy at all, I would say. Like, I really need to confess and to be honest. So whenever someone says, I want to open a business in Brazil and I want to secure the permanent residency that way, I'm going to say, listen, we're not gonna be able to assist you. And that happens kind of often, right? Unless the person is a participant in our live stream, and in this case, they know we're not gonna follow that route. But that's a very interesting take. And by the way, like we have an office in Texas. That's where I am today. I am in Dallas. Where is your brother located, Levi?
In close to Houston, in a place called the Woodlands.
The Woodlands, yes. It's like it's still part of the great Houston, and Texas is a huge state, as you can probably tell. And Houston to Dallas, like they are actually, you know, like Dallas is in the north side, Houston is more like towards the south side. And but Texas is super convenient for business people, right? Like, and that was probably the reason why we chose like Texas, from taxation to infrastructure. I mean, or you know, prices. Everything is just perfect for business, right? Oh, so I understand why your brother chose.
One time I was talking to my brother, and he was very surprised because here in Poland, for a person to buy a property, depending on the location, you need to have an interview with the defense ministry of the country. Because just so they see that you are not a Russian wanting to create a base here or something like that. So you need to have an interview with the defense. And when I told that to my brother, he said, you know what? To buy a property here in Texas, you don't even need to be here. You can do that via the internet. And for me, that was like, that is the difference between one country that puts red tape for any reasons, and others that doesn't put virtually none, almost.
Yeah, and this goes back to the dual arbitration concept that we were talking, right? Like, I mean, if you are able to continue your business presence in the United States, but live elsewhere, right? Like, then you're getting the best out of those two worlds, right? You're making money in a place that is, you know, conducive for business, and you are spending and living in a country in which you can actually enjoy life and, you know, like get the best out of those two worlds. That's such an interesting concept, right? And in your journey, Levi, like, how do you assist people trying to accomplish that?
Yes, all the idea of my channel, actually, the first thing that I wrote was a book that so far is still for sale. It was quite successful still. I think it's among the best selling books on Amazon about living abroad. It's called Moving Out and Keeping Your Sanity. And after writing this book, I had the idea to change some of the chapters as videos. And that's how I started my channel. The first one of those videos, and then people start to ask about my experience of living in those different countries that I live it, and I start to make those videos, and after that start demand for more. And of course, when there's someone interested in knowing a bit more about those countries that I know, I always try to share my knowledge, and I also have some contacts in all those countries that I talk about. Like recently, when I made a very interesting video about Italy. Actually it was on air yesterday, about the question that they have a very famous program of the €1 houses, where people can buy a €1 house in Italy to live there. But there is a lot of catchy things on this program, which in some cases might be a real trap to some people, these €1 houses. So I talked to some people that actually bought those €1 houses to ask what were the biggest problem they faced. Some of them lost all their investment. So I put all that on my channel because we talk about the good things, but we also must talk about the not very good things. I think I'll not be able to go when I visit my brother in USA, I will not be able to go to, for example, to Pittsburgh, because every single video I talk about Pittsburgh, and I think that people there, they will start to hate me sooner or later. In my last video about Brazil, I say that why someone would live in a city that is 5 times more violent than Florianopolis, which is Pittsburgh, and costs 2 times more. Because actually this is true. It's true. Unfortunately, sometimes we must point what people have that is not that good and what they can have if they go somewhere else to do the geo arbitrage that we talk about.
Absolutely. And by the way, I'm going to share here a link to Levi's book, let me see if I can share. Moving out. I'm gonna share the name, and you guys can just search on Amazon. For some reason, it's not allowing me to share. It's moving out, working abroad, and keeping your sanity by Levi Borba. All right. Just share the title, so you should definitely take a look and check into the book where Levi shares a little bit about his experience, right, Levi?
Exactly.
That's great. So in addition, like you do like consulting, Levi?
Yes.
Is that how you work? Like, how does you work? Like your practice? Like you work with a consultation?
Yes.
Is it like a program?
We provide one-to-one consultations. We had before the consultation was 3 people. Now it's only 2 because one of them is he's based in Russia. So we decided kind of to avoid any major problem just to split. But yes, 2 people. If someone wants a consultation about living in Europe, in countries that I have experience like Italy, Spain, Portugal, and Poland, of course. And we also have the other person that talks about USA. As I said, I just like you do in Brazil, I don't advise people to come to those countries, Italy, Spain, Portugal, or Poland, to open a business unless it's a very specific kind of business. But if you want to have a comfortable life, yes. If someone wants to open a business, I put to my partner that he can talk a bit more about USA because it's a better place to open a business there.
Very interesting. Yeah. And you know, like in Brazil, like particularly in São Paulo, there are many specific expat communities having a lot of success in business. But that's why I was talking specifically about US citizens, because the successful ones, they are going to usually come. I can give you some examples from China, from Turkey, from the Palestine, right? Like, I mean, so usually the way I see that happening is that people, you know, like they are used to tough environments, right? Like, I mean, so when they get to Brazil, it's not really like a challenge for them to understand, I don't know, like the red tape, the bureaucracy, and to deal with, you know, like challenges, right? And my concern is like when you're coming from the United States, because everything works so smoothly, then you get to the Brazilian style of business, then, you know, things get rough. But if you're coming from another place in which it's difficult to succeed, guess what? You're not gonna feel, you know, the same pain, right? So,
yes,
yeah, that's an interesting perspective. Like you see, like if you go, there is a particular neighborhood in São Paulo. I'm not sure if you still remember about it. It's like Santa Efigênia. It's a whole neighborhood just like for computers, electronics, you know, and phones, like everything electronic. And over there, it's very common for you to see people like communicating in Arabic or Chinese, right? Yes, and sometimes, you know, the Brazilians, they are going to go there, all they're going to be able to tell is like the price. This is the price, right? They're not going to even be able to have a conversation. But it's interesting, like at the same time, you know, Brazil still represents an opportunity, you know, business-wise, for some other countries, right? Which I would guess, like if compared to Brazil, maybe they're not even better, like from the red tape and challenges perspective.
No, I always tell to people, Latin America has a lot of red tapes, but when you take Southern Europe country, in Italy, you literally, every time you go to a public office, you need to carry a folder this size full of papers. Because they are going, all the public employees there, they are going to ask you for papers that you even couldn't imagine that exist. And if you don't walk always with this folder full of papers, you are going to go to your house, go back there the next day, go back to your house, go 5, 6 times. So in Southern Europe, it's not that different from Brazil in that point, I would say.
Yeah, I mean, probably because we actually, you know, we come from, you know, the Portuguese, right? Like, I mean, so, And what about in Portugal? Like during the time you were living in Portugal, like was it the same level of bureaucracy as in Italy? Was it a little bit better? Like how would you compare Portugal and Italy?
I would say that Portugal has less bureaucracy than Italy for two reasons. The first is that Italy is a very, very, very aged country. People are much older there. So the degree of digitalization is lower. You will need papers. People still use fax there. So it's like go back to the 90s, even the 80s. In Portugal, things are a bit more advanced. So they are more digitalized. A lot of processes are online. So it's not as bad as Italy. But still, it's far from easy in many things. In many things, it's far from easy, especially, and this is something that a lot of people struggle when they are looking for, let's say, a place to buy in Portugal. And they look all those announcements on the internet, a house for sale this, a house, nearly all of them are sold. They are sold long ago, but they never removed the announcements.
Look at that.
So people will call for 9, 10 offers just to hear that, oh, it was sold 2 years ago.
It was sold already. Yeah. People say that like technology-wise, like the backbone of technology, internet in Portugal is pretty solid. Like sometimes I see, you know, like Americans saying, listen, I wish my internet was so good as internet is in Portugal, right? Like I mean, there are some interesting aspects. I think on the immigration framework, they are also doing a beautiful job, right? I mean, I think Portugal is trying to find ways to differentiate itself, and it is being very successful in terms of attracting foreign citizens and money. Right now, I also understand that there is some type of not sure if the word is resistance, like particularly from the older generations in terms of foreign citizens coming to Portugal, right? Like, did you feel any type of animosity from Portuguese or this type of conversation? Well, you know, the U.S. citizens, they're invading Portugal.
No, I never felt that. The biggest complaining that we see in Portugal is about the increasing housing prices. That is an eternal complaint. It's a favorite point that they will complain. Sometimes they will blame, of course, foreigners because, oh, they come here and they took all the houses, so now everything is very expensive. But on the other hand, a lot of people, first, one thing that is really, really cool in Portugal is that it's a country where a lot of people speak English, especially younger people. They speak very good English. That is not common in Europe. That is not in Italy. A lot of people not speak English. In Spain, less than Portugal. I think Portugal, among the Southern European nations, is leading on that aspect. So it makes life easier. But yes, they will complain that foreigners are making house expensive. But they also recognize that foreigners are also bringing money and dynamics to the economy, especially in those places like Algarve in the south, or even in Braga, which is becoming a huge focus for digital nomads and remote workers because it has good prices and good quality of life. So in those parts, people recognize their good role for the
Braga is north of Porto, right?
Yes, yes.
And why do people like over there? It's almost like at the border with Spain, right? Like I mean, is it more affordable than Lisbon? I would
of
guess.
The major cities is the closest one to the border with Spain. Of the major cities, and Braga is attracting people first because there's kind of a little hub of startups there being created. First it was Porto. Porto was like the startup capital of Portugal. But then they start to go to Braga because Porto starts to get a bit saturated and it starts to get more expensive. And then Braga, because they have a very good university there, which is the University of Braga, they have also few other cities around, all of them, which is Guimarães and Aveiro, which is all of them mid-sized cities with very well-educated population. So people start to move there. Especially, and the local government also offers some really interesting incentives for people that want to move there, work remotely. So a lot of web designers, a lot of people related to technology. They want to work remotely. They can find office space for really good prices, prices that pretty much to us Lisbon 15 years ago, they can still find those prices in Braga. So it started to attract a lot of people because of that. And they have an airport, a good airport that has flights to many other European countries. So they are well connected to.
That's interesting. Well, needless to mention, like Portugal has a very good digital nomad visa route, right? So for those who can work remotely and do the, you know, like the geo arbitration, right? Like yes. you're paid in the United States and you spend your money in Portugal, right? Like you live you know, a more comfortable life, a more social life, I would say, while still making money in US dollars, right, Levi? That's the idea.
Exactly.
All right.
This is the digital nomad visa in Portugal. It's probably, I would say, the most successful in Europe. The most successful in Europe because there are other countries that have similar ones, Czech Republic, for example. But they put together a very attractive country naturally, because Portugal is a very attractive country, together with a system that is very easy to understand and is very straightforward to obtain. So in terms of digital nomad accessibility, I would say Portugal is leading Europe nowadays.
That's great. And if you were to recommend like destinations for our listeners here, like which cities in Portugal would you recommend, and is there one that you would not recommend at all?
Yes. So the three cities that I would recommend is by this order. First, Braga. Second, Coimbra. And third, Aveiro. Those three cities. All of them are in the north, which may look like a surprise because the biggest focus is usually the south, Algarve. But why those three cities? First, still their prices are affordable, very affordable, because cities like Albufeira in the south, they got expensive. Those British people, not complaining about them, especially because they are a big part of my audience, not complaining, but they made Albufeira a really expensive place. And those cities in the north, they don't have so many British retirees, so they are still very good if you want to go there, live there, good quality of life. And overall, a very good infrastructure, hospitals, schools, universities, airports. You have everything around. A city that I would not recommend, I would say, not Albufeira per se as a city, but I would say all that part. And it's for two reasons. The first, as I said, it got more expensive. And the second, it's like if you are going to move to a country, and that is not only for Portugal, for every country that you want to move, and this is in every video, I always say the same thing at the end of the video. You should learn the language of that country. Unless you're going there for a short period, you should at least try to learn the language and to adapt to that country. And the last time that I was in southern of Portugal, especially this part of Algarve, somehow it don't feel very much Portuguese anymore. You go, every restaurant, they are offering English breakfast and fish and chips, and menus are not in Portuguese anymore, they are in English.
Wow.
So I say, okay, geo arbitrage is cool. You wanna save money, and that's excellent. But you also want to have the experience of living in a country that is very attractive to live, which is Portugal. So unless you want to keep living like British, maybe Albufeira is not, and Algarve, this part of Algarve is not the best place anymore. It's beautiful. But I say that it's beautiful, just not the Portuguese experience.
Got it. All right. And Levi, so it was a great conversation. If our listeners, if our audience, if they want to reach you, like what is the way to reach you for a consultation and to learn more about your work?
Yes, they can reach me via my email. It's Levi@expatriateconsultancy.com.
let me write over here. So Levi at
expatriateconsultancy.com.
Expatriateconsulting.com, right?
Consultancy.
Consultancy. Expatriateconsultancy.com. All right, like I'm typing. Can you see our chat window, Levi?
Yes.
Take a look. Let me know if it's correct.
It is correct. It is correct. It's exactly that.
All right. So there you go. You have Levi's email. Do yourself a favor. Contact Levi to see how he can help you. And any final questions here for Levi before we ended this live stream? It was very good, Levi. And for how long have you been developing your channel? Like you have over like 7,000 subscribers now.
More or less. I started to develop this channel 3 years ago. 3 years ago, I started. Instead, the consultancy was 5 years ago, but the channel 3 years ago.
Right. So you're doing well, right, Levi? With this number of subscribers, I mean, we can tell people are enjoying. It looks like we had some issue here. Bill is saying he couldn't see the live stream did not start for 45 minutes, meaning maybe it was just like a part of our live stream. Anyhow, Bill, thank you for letting me know. We have the recording for this session. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to upload my conversation with Levi to our channel. And this way you guys can see the entire conversation with Levi. And then I hope this works. Marcelo has a question here for Levi. What countries are Levi's specialty? So which countries, like if the person has want to know which countries you specialize on, Levi?
Yeah, my specialties are Italy, Spain, Portugal, and Central Eastern Europe, especially Poland and Czech Republic. Those are the 5 countries that I'm more focused in helping both my viewers and my clients.
Perfect. There you go, Marcela. So thank you again, Levi. Hermon, welcome, Hermon. So I apologize. It looks like we had some glitch in terms of letting the audience in, but we're gonna publish the entire conversation with Levi on our channel, and you're gonna see a link. And then again, you have Levi's email address. You can shoot him a message and discuss how Levi can assist you in your journey. Thank you so much, Levi. It was a pleasure speaking with you today.
Thank you. Have a good day, everyone. Bye.
Thank you, Levi. Thank you, everyone. You have a blessed rest of your Wednesday, and see you again on Sunday.